Students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from Central Europe. I hope everybody is having a great day so far, is having a great weekend so far. This is a members chat class and it's a chance for our members to ask some questions and get some answers specifically about the reading section. As usual, our materials are coming from, and these live classes are sponsored by our web portals, www.aehelp.com for academic IELTS. That's academicenglishhelp.com. And for the general version of the exam, check us out at GIELTShelp.com. That's general IELTShelp.com. All right, if you haven't seen it yet, check out our new speaking video with a candidate from India who scores a Band 8 for her performance. Definitely that will help you on the speaking section. If you have questions, comments, concerns about the IELTS exam, don't be shy. Send me an email, Adrian, ADRIAN, at aehelp.com. Happy to help you out. All right, if you want to get our books, you can get them from Amazon, AE Helps Academic IELTS, and GE Helps General IELTS. So in this class, members, questions and answers. Specifically, we will focus on the reading section today. And then after that, we will have a part 2 speaking that will be for everybody. Hi, Ferdovs. Good to see you in class. Still waiting on some more members to join in. Meanwhile, I'll show you very quickly our websites where you can get some of the best help anywhere online to pass your next IELTS exam. This is the academic website here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join it or try it for free by clicking the green button there. For the general version of the exam, it looks like this. It's very similar except for the green background. Click that big red button to join us there. Hi, Roshni. Hi, Amarjeet. Hi, Hung. Good to see more members coming into class. All right. Let's hop back to today's lesson. There's Rahul, Alexander, and Zainab. All right, let's talk a little bit about the reading section. I know a lot of students are a little bit anxious about the reading section, so I'll just give you a chance to ask me some questions. Hi, Kesey. So members, any questions specifically about the reading section of the IELTS exam, you can ask me about the academic or the general version of the test. So just fire away any question that comes to mind, general strategies, what you should do before the exam, during the exam, how to answer specific questions. So now's your chance to dive deep into this topic of reading section strategies and information, tips, and so on. Here it is. That's what I was looking for. All right. Rahul says the true, false, not given questions are always tricky. Not able to get through these ones correctly. Okay, Rahul, we have a few videos, so that's a specific question for the true, false, not given. The first point that I'll give you is check out the true, false, not given video on the channel. Okay, there's a full strategy video on that, Rahul. But otherwise, I'll get a little bit into it. So with true, false, not given, and it's the same, by the way, for yes, no, not given, if you see that one. You might see this yes, no, not given. They're virtually the same question. Okay, do not read these before the passage, and do not try to search for the answers. Okay, so it's very important, viewers and Rahul, that with the true, false, not given, you do not read these questions before the passage because they're confusing if they're not in the passage, or they're false or no according to the passage. And don't try to search for them. It's virtually impossible to search for a not given paraphrased statement. So don't search for them. You will waste a lot of time. So, of course, Rahul, what you're probably thinking is, what should you do? Kisi, Roshni, I see your questions coming up, so I'll get to that in a second as well. So Rahul is probably thinking, oh, what should I do? So Rahul, what you should do is use logic. Okay. In computer program, it's called the if this, then that logic. Okay. So it's basically questions. Ask, is it important for the passage? If yes, then given. Okay. Ask second question. You'll see in a second here, Rahul, what I mean by this. I'll show you an example too. Okay. If no, then not given, mark NG and move to the next question. Okay. Now, if it is important for the passage, then you ask a second question. Ask, is it true or false? If you don't know, then search for keywords. Okay. Are you following me on that, Rahul? On this logic that I'm using for the true, false, not given? And I'll get to your questions, Kisi, Roshni, Danish, Amarjit. I see those questions. They're good questions as well. Let me hop back to yesterday's reading passage. I think most of you were in that class. I seem to remember most of you in this class. And this one, in fact, had true, false, not given questions at the end. So we can look at those. Remember our good friend, the quote-unquote jellyfish that's not really a jellyfish? It was our friend, the Portuguese man of war. Okay. So here we go. True, two yes, no, not given questions. So they're kind of like the true, false, not given questions. If you weren't in yesterday's class, that's okay. So Nomvius and Phyzalia's relationship is known to be destructive. So the question that we ask here is, what question? Instead of me giving you the fish, show me how you fish. So what should be your question with this yes, no, not given, number 39, to try to figure out whether it's yes, no, or not given? And I'm sure at least a couple of you were in yesterday's class. So based on what I said, what is the full sentence question for the yes, no, not given strategy to figure out the answer quickly and accurately? Can you tell me that? Meanwhile, I'll skim read some of your questions so I can prepare my thoughts, okay? Okay. Yeah, so I see them. Okay. So Ferdov says, is it true or not? No, that's not your first question, Ferdovs. That's your second question. Kisi says, is the relationship between the two species important for the passage? Yeah, you're absolutely right, Kisi. That's the correct question. So the correct question to ask here is the relationship between, it's shortening, the two species, or these two species, important for the passage? And what's the answer to that? So for those of you who were in class yesterday, what's the answer to this question? Hung says the answer is yes, it is. Okay, so Hung says, okay, the answer is yes, it is. And you're right, Hung. Yeah, we remember yesterday reading this passage that the passage is about the relationship between this fish, Nombius, and the Portuguese manivore. So yes, it is. So yes, it is tells you that therefore number 39 has to be given. So it is given. Basically, what we've done now is we have eliminated the not given concept. Okay, Zainab says, yes, it's important to the passage. Yeah, so those of you who were in the class yesterday know that it's important. So we know that it's given. Now we ask the question Ferdovs stated a moment ago. So he says, is it true or not? So is it true that Nombius and Physialia's relationship is known to be destructive? So is it true or is that false? Is it known to be destructive? Do they destroy each other? Do they kill each other? Hung says, no, they don't kill each other. Ferdovs agrees, no. Roshni says, no. Yeah. So we know it's not. So you answer no. So here, the correct answer then is no, or just the big letter N in your answer sheet. And you get that correct. Amarjeet, you're right. It's not. Okay, be confident. So all of you get 1 point for getting that one correct. Okay, let's go to number 40. So we'll do one more quick example, and then I'll get to some of the other questions that came up. There were some really good ones about reading for the IELTS. So I'll get to them. I saw Kisi, yours was next. I'll move through as many as we can in today's class, okay? So let's go to number 40. The chief reason why Nombius exists is to act in commensalism with Physalia. What's the question for number 40? So for number 39, we figured out that the answer is no. For number 40, what's the first question you should ask in your head to get the correct answer quickly for that yes, no, not given question? So what should you be asking? What should you be thinking? Rahul, I hope you're paying attention, because this is definitely the most effective strategy for yes, no, not given. So Zainab says, is it important? Now, Zainab, what you want to do is you want to practice asking the full question. You can easily make a mistake if you just ask the very short question, is it important? So you need to ask the full question. Hung is asking, is the chief reason why Namia exists to act in commensalism with Physalia? Okay, so a better way to ask it, I think, Hung, is to say, let me move up a little bit here. So I think a better way to ask this, Hung, it's not always best to just repeat what you see in the statement, although that's better than just asking, is it important, Hung? But is it important for this passage to know the reason for the nauseous fish's existence on Earth. Okay, if I want to be very technical. So that would be the full question. Okay. So is it important for this passage to know the reason for the nauseous fish's existence on Earth? Is it important to know why this fish exists? I mean, think clearly here. Think in a simple way. Why any animal exists. Think scientifically. No, Zainab's right. It's absolutely no. I mean, think about it, students. I think you're trying to see something that's not there. We don't know the answer to that question anywhere. We don't know why humans exist. We don't know what the reason is why fish exist. So there's no real understanding for the reason of existence of life. It just exists. Okay, so keep your thoughts simple, right? That is the question of Pandora's box, right? What is the meaning of life? I highly, highly doubt that an IELTS passage is going to explore or try to understand the reasons for the existence of a fish. Okay, so I have to agree with Zainab and Kisi here. Okay, so absolutely not. No, this is not important. Nor does it even make sense. So very easily, for this one, you should come to the conclusion that this is a not given and move on. Okay, is that clear what I'm saying by that? So think about how strange that question is. The main reason why this fish exists is to be a friend, to live in a symbiosis with Physalia. That would be a very bizarre circumstance, right? I highly doubt it. I mean, I think the main reason it exists is just to exist, to live on Earth. But the passage is not going to talk about that, okay? So it's not given. Now, notice something interesting with these two questions. So in this passage, you only had two yes, no, not given questions. Neither of them were yes, okay? So the first one's a no, and the second one is a not given, and that can happen on the exam, okay? If you're trying to search for these two questions in the passage, you're going to waste a lot of time before you may or may not realize that they are nowhere in the passage or contradicted by the passage. So this is the reason, Rahul, that you have to use a logical approach to true, false, not given, yes, no, not given, and not searching for the answers and not reading them before the passage. Okay, so practice this, Rahul, practice this, viewers, and you will do much better. Okay, I'm going to get back to Kisi's question because Kisi had a really good question as well. Make sure to practice those true, false, not given ones, students. It takes practice to get that logic flowing nicely. Okay. So let's jump back to Kisi's question now for the reading section of the IELTS. Here we go. Kisi is asking, and it's a good question, Kisi. So Kisi is asking, what if I read the first time? So what if I read once and I don't understand? I read again. I still don't understand. Am I wasting my time? Should I just start searching for answers? Now, Kisi, just to be on the same page, are you asking me if this happens during the actual exam? Okay. So are you asking me, Kisi, if this situation happens during the actual exam or it's happening at home while you're studying for the exam, what you should do? Because those are two different scenarios. So I assume that you're asking me if this is happening during the exam, right? What you should do. Right? Yeah, okay. So if you read the passage and you really have no idea of what's going on in the passage, and then you try to read it again, and you still don't have any idea. Yeah, got it, Kisi, actual exam. Then should you just start searching for answers? It's a tricky question, Kisi. Ideally, you would have some sort of understanding. So my first instinct as a teacher is if this is happening, you are reading too fast and not critically. Okay. So when I see this happen to students, it's because they feel the time pressure. So they're like, oh, I only have 20 minutes, so I have to read super fast. So they read faster than they're able to comprehend. Okay. Ideally, Kisi, you should have about 60% understanding of a passage after you read it. Okay. So this will make sense in a moment. You should understand a passage at least 60% after reading it carefully. Okay? If you don't, so if you don't understand 60% of the passage, if you're under 60%, you will be in trouble to get a good score for that particular passage, and it will kind of turn into a guessing game at that point. You can search for the answers, but again, there's a lot of paraphrasing that's going on. If you don't understand the passage, it's likely that you won't understand the questions either. And trying to figure out the answers by matching up keywords might get you a few points, but you're going to lose some marks for sure if you're under 60%. Okay? Now, what should you do in this case? Kisi, it's a very good question. Okay. Number one, don't waste too much time on this passage. Instead, invest your time into the other two passages that you hopefully understand more. Okay, so that's the first step. Okay, careful not to waste a lot of time on a passage that you're having real difficulty with, and then taking time from the other two passages that might actually be easier. Okay, that's number one. Okay, number two, if you are forced into searching for answers, focus on the first 6 or 7 of the 12, 13. Okay, so usually, as most of you know, a reading passage has about 12 to 13 questions for each, sometimes 14. Okay, it's 40 in total, so maybe 13, 13, 14. You want to focus, in this case, on the first 6 or 7 questions. So don't even worry too much about the last 6. If you can, and you have time, just take a guess at those, especially if they're multiple choice or true, false, not given. At least you have a chance. But focus on the first 6 or 7 in this situation. Why do I say that? What do you think? Firdav, Zainab, Roshni, Amarjeet? Why do you think I say focus on the first 6 or 7 questions? Especially in this scenario. So Kesey said scenario is, I read it twice, I still don't understand. I'm forced into basically skimming, scanning, searching, hunting, and gathering my answers. Why would I recommend that you focus on the first 6, 7? Yeah, so Roshni, for Dobbs, those are both good answers. So they're going to be easier questions usually. Yeah. They're given in sequence. Okay. And they have the least amount of paraphrasing. So these will be easier, come earlier in the passage, and contain the, let's call it simplest or simpler paraphrasing. Okay. So you want to focus on the first 6 or 7 questions, especially the first few in each set. Okay. So also think about the first few in each set. So try to pick up these points. I'll show you what I mean by that. So when you have multiple questions like this, okay, so this is again yesterday's passage, then what you should especially focus on, so the way the IELTS works is this is going to be the easiest question. This is a little bit more difficult, more difficult. This comes earlier in the passage. This comes later in the passage. So if I'm really having trouble understanding the passage and the questions, then I'm going to focus especially on these questions here. Okay. Maybe this one as well. So I'll take the first 3 from that. And then here I might take 1 and 2. Okay. So I'll take this question here, these 2. And then I'll take this question here, number 37. So those are the easiest. Each question set moves from the easiest to the most difficult. So this is easier than this question, usually. Okay. In addition, these questions are usually going to be more simple or easier, simpler than these questions. Okay, so the later in the question set and the later in the questions, the more difficult they become. All right, and they are usually in sequence. So number 37, I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so this was a fairly challenging passage, and we see here the Portuguese man of war's something acts as both a defense and attack mechanism. So this is the very first question for this passage. If we go back to the passage beginning, we see that very quickly here in the beginning, its powerful poison serves as a defense and attack for the species. So if I'm skimming and scanning, I can find the words defense and attack, right? And hopefully I can figure out that the answer there must be poison. Okay? Now, here's an interesting little trick. If I go all the way down to that multiple choice question, it's fairly synonymous with that first fill in the blank. And you will find this in a lot of IELTS exams. So the non-bias's main mechanism of defense, okay, so defense, I see the word again, is, again, up here, later in the passage. So again, I'm going to be wasting obviously a lot of time because I'm searching for this, right? Okay. So I'm looking for defense, and I might have trouble finding it. Now, obviously, it's not going to be venom because the Nombius, I believe it's about the Nombius, right, is not it's not poisonous, right? So it's later in the passage. So I might have trouble finding the word defense or mechanism of defense because it's not there. Venom, I might search for, and then protective mucus, I might search for. I'm looking for maybe not something about the Nombius, so I go back, and eventually I will come to find that the Nombius's main defense is its swimming abilities. So instead of developing protective mucus, the fish depends on its swimming abilities. So eventually I'll find the word depends here, and then I can hopefully figure out swimming abilities. But that's about the best that I can do for a passage where I don't have clear understanding. Now, one more important tip, Kesey, to answer your question clearly, okay, so is to actually avoid this situation. So you want to avoid not understanding the passage. To avoid not understanding the passage, if you start reading and you realize, oh my gosh, I don't understand anything, stop. Slow down. Reread the title. Refocus yourself. That's the most important advice, Kesey. So if you begin reading the introduction and suddenly you think or realize, I don't understand anything. I'm reading, okay? That's a terrible feeling, and then you start to panic, okay? So first thing is just stop, okay? Stop reading. Don't just keep pushing yourself forward into the unknown abyss. So stop. Read the title again. Refocus yourself. Visualize. Relax. And read slower. Okay, that's my advice. So try that first. Okay, so try that first. So refocus yourself, and then if you're really like, wow, this passage is just full of a whole bunch of unknown words to me, then you can go to these strategies. Hopefully, Kesey, that will help. Okay. All right. Let me go back and see if there's some other questions there. I saw a few more right after Kesey. So Roshni, Kesey, sorry, before I move on, Kesey, Ferdovs, Roshni, Hung, does that make sense, that strategy that I told you about if you're reading and you're panicking that you don't understand anything about the passage? So is that somewhat helpful? Is that clear on how you should mentally approach that situation? Keep in mind, students, that the human brain is an exceptionally powerful decrypting machine. It's a deciphering, decrypting machine. I mean, just think that humans are able to understand eventually ancient languages that we lost thousands of years in the past, like Egyptian hieroglyphs, and we can eventually figure out what they mean without even having a dictionary for it, just by figuring out the logic. So your brain is a deciphering machine. It can actually figure out a lot more than you may imagine. Okay, keep that in mind. All right, so slow yourself down. Don't panic. Panic is the enemy. Confusion leads to, or panic leads to confusion. Okay. Yeah, Hung, it's definitely one of the biggest factors that I find students not able to understand a passage is they are too stressed, they lose focus, and they fall apart. And they start to forget ideas even in their own language. So yeah, stress is definitely a big culprit. Okay, you're right. Okay, let me get back to Roshni's question. So Roshni says, so I'll read your words verbatim, Roshni. So Roshni says, sir, your strategy like reading the whole passage, Roshni, whole is spelled W-H-O-L, okay, not a hole in the ground, but the whole, passage, then answer without looking. I cannot retain most of the paragraph. I run out of time, or I give the wrong answer. Okay, Roshni, it's I know answering a question with another question is not the best, but have you practiced, Roshni, that strategy that I showed before where you stop after each paragraph and you think, what is the paragraph about? Why is the author presenting the information? How is the author presenting the information? Have you gone through a few passages, Roshni, where you've actually taken the time to really do that step by step for each paragraph, writing down the answers as you go through the passage? The reason I'm asking you that, Roshni, is because the only way to do this strategy well is to practice it at home in this way. So you have to train your brain to see, comprehend, and hold this information as you're going through the paragraphs. So have you tried at least? And I definitely suggest it with at least 5 to 10 passages in a perfect world. In a perfect world, you will go through at least 5 to 10 passages, really just step by step, probably about 2 hours for each passage, where you stop after every paragraph and go, okay, what is this paragraph about? It is about the physiology of the Physalia physalis. Why does the author talk about this? Because it is clearly connected to its behaviors and its communal relationship with the nomius. Okay? All right. So you're saying, Roshni, yes, sir, but in the actual exam, I still give the wrong answer. Okay, Roshni, try to do simulated practice exams at home. So take a fresh, brand new reading section that you haven't seen before, simulate the real exam, go through it using this technique, and then when you're finished and you mark it, look at the mistakes, the wrong answers, see why you made them, and then see which question you weren't able to identify clearly in the passage. Okay, so I'll make a note of what I'm saying here. So this is for your question, Roshni. Try this and then see what happens, okay? So simulate a reading exam at home with a new reading section. Okay. Do it timed, so timed in 1 hour. Okay. Then mark it. I'll do this as a step 1, step 2. Okay, so step 1. Step 2. Mark it, identify your mistakes. And then 3, look at where each correct answer was contained in the passage. And ask yourself, okay, this is the important part here, is ask yourself which, what, why, how question or questions you missed or misunderstood. Okay. Then you will identify where the mistake is coming from. Does that make sense, Roshni? What I meant by that? So do a timed exam. Say, okay, I'm going to do it just like the real test where I'm not getting these answers. see where you made the mistakes, and then maybe you'll notice, so perhaps you'll notice that it's really the why questions or the how questions. You may realize something interesting like that, okay? So you may realize that it is mostly the how questions that you are having trouble with. Then you can focus on that, okay? On improving that logic specifically, okay? All right, so good questions so far. Those are all, I think a lot of students share those pains with you. All right, let's see. So I see another question. So Danish is also, I see Danish that you're also complaining about not being able to remember all of the information as well as you should. Students, remember to regularly practice your visualization for retention. It's so very important, okay? So you must regularly, actively practice your visualization while you read. This is the most important practice that many students don't do. Technology, as much fun as it is, like mobile phones and smart TVs and movie theaters in 3D, as entertaining as they are robbing us of our imagination, creativity, and visualization. So remember that technology, like movies, smartphones, and TVs, this bombardment of visual media is fun, but it comes at a great cost to creativity, imagination, visualization, and innovation. Okay? Don't let technology steal your ability to imagine and visualize. Okay? You have to practice every day. Especially when you're reading. Okay? Especially when you're reading. Let me ask you a question, members. When you read a passage like this one about Physalia physalis, what should you visualize? What should you see when you're reading this passage about this beautiful creature that lives in the ocean? Certainly, this is an extremely difficult passage to understand if you're not visualizing, if you're not seeing this information, if you're not seeing this polyp, if you're not seeing this fish swimming around it, if you're not seeing the way that they interact with each other, the way that they feed off of each other, the way they help each other. Okay? Visualization is your most powerful tool, students. It's your most powerful learning and deciphering or decrypting tool. We are visual creatures as humans. This entire back part of our brain, called the occipital lobe, is dedicated to visual processing. If you're not using vision in your reading, you are crippling yourself. You're not using your most powerful processing, deciphering mechanism. So again, members, what should you see when you are going through this passage, Physalia physalis, and reading about this fish, Nombius grombi? In an ideal situation, if you haven't checked out the key strategies videos on our websites, which include visualization, I strongly recommend you do that. Go through those interactive lessons and watch the videos in the video section if you have access to it. Ferdov says it's difficult to visualize if I don't know all the new words. That's fine, Ferdovs. Visualize what you do know, of course, right? Visualize what you do know. Let me jump back here. Just look at this paragraph with me. On the other hand, the Nombius has two distinct gains from its innate behavior with Physalia. As an experiment demonstrated, upon introduction, the Nombius initially swam near the surface and around the Physalia in large circular pattern in both clockwise and counterclockwise directions. This action protects the fish from attack. Most predatory fishes of Nombius therefore avoid the man of war or sustain serious injury and often death. Second, the Physalia provides a food source for the Nombius. Okay. So, what do you see? When I read this, when I read this paragraph, what I see is I am the fish. Okay. This is Adrian here. Maybe I have my microphone on me like that. Okay, teaching the class. This is the ocean surface. Here is this interesting looking colony of polyps. And I actually see myself, okay? So I actually see myself swimming around this fish in both directions. So swimming this way and swimming this way, okay, circling around it. And this interesting creature gives me food. So here is a hamburger, okay, so I can nibble on it when I'm hungry. And also in the ocean here is a shark, okay, and obviously the shark is quite scared because if it comes close to this guy here, then it dies, okay. So I'm a happy little fish living around this interesting sea creature. So I'm visualizing this. Okay, so Hung is saying something similar. Hung says, I'm the fish and the other creature is swimming around me and I need the food from the creature. Good. So Hung, you're on the right track. Okay, that's what you should see. So you should develop your visual prowess and ability as you read these passages. Members, the last thought that I'm going to leave you with today is every single time you read an IELTS passage or any school text, when you're finished, ask yourself, did I see what I just read? Even if it's in your own language. Okay, the problem isn't just visualization in English with some unknown words, as Ferdov said. Of course, that adds to the difficulty. But even in our own language, many people don't visualize enough with enough detail. So my challenge to you, and this will greatly help your overall band score, is anytime, okay, this is the challenge here for you, is anytime you read an IELTS passage or any vital information, ask yourself, did I truly visualize what I read? Did I see enough details? Did I include myself into this information? If your answer is no to any of these, then practice your weakness. Okay? So that is my last thought. I'm going to wrap it up there. That's a very good note to leave on. Remember to ask these questions. So while you do your readings over the next few days and going forward, pay close attention to this. Thank you so much Firdavs, Hung, Roshni, Kisi, Zainab for joining in this class and doing this Q&A session with me. It definitely wouldn't be the same without you. Coming up next will be speaking part 2, practice an example for the cue card section where everybody will be able to chat. I hope that these tips and strategies will help you going forward. Certainly they work. I'm not the one inventing these. They are proven by educational psychologists. So tried, tested, and true. Have a great rest of your day. Hopefully, I will see you in 30 minutes. Amarjeet, thank you for your contributions as well. Bye for now, students. Oh, and before I go, the strategies can, of course, be found in your premium course at aehelp.com and gieltshelp.com. So check those out.